movie genre is sprinkled and littered with so many different sequels and remakes and spin-offs that honestly it's kind of hard to keep track of. But today we're going to be talking about my favorite horror movie franchises. Groovy. Hey, how's it going, everyone? Thank you for tuning in to another episode here at Figure Out Films. I'm your host, as always, Chris. And today, like I said, we are going to explore the horror movie franchises. Now, not to get confused, I'm not talking about trilogies, I'm not talking about a sequel, and I'm not talking about some crazy like public domain people making their own movies. I'm looking at you, Amityville. Today I am talking about my top 10 favorite horror movie franchises. Now, again, I want to highlight that this is my top 10 favorite horror movie franchises. It might look a little different to you because I have really bad taste and you keep subscribing and tuning in, which I do appreciate. But we're going to talk about some franchises that just missed the mark, and then obviously go in depth with some of my favorite movies and just the horror movie genre, and just kind of rank them. Now, before we even get going, though, I do want to say I thank you all for the support. We're about to hit 500 subscribers, and to be honest, for as long as this channel has gone on, I'm surprised, that we'd even make it this far. So let's go ahead and smash that like button, hit that subscribe if you haven't already. We continue supporting the channel. It's been a lot of fun. But I do want to talk about horror, which is my favorite genre, I would say, next to sci-fi. And I love sequel movies, and I love that the genre can produce so many different takes on an original concept. Usually these original movies and franchises are usually the ones most people watch, and then they leave. And then there are people like us on this channel specifically who like to go and watch these franchise movies and just enjoy them for what they are, supporting this entity. Imagine a world where a Nightmare on Elm Street or Friday the 13th existed and we didn't get a part 2. I mean, for me, sure, the world would be still great, but the world is just so much better knowing that there's a part 6 and a part 7 in these franchises. But not to get confused with like trilogies or just like a remake and a sequel to a remake. I consider those part of the franchise, of course, but we're going to try and keep it a little simple. These are just movies that are franchises that are horror movies to me. So I understand like the Alien, the Predator movies, some people consider horror movie franchises. Those are a little bit more sci-fi. I'm trying to stick a little bit more traditional with horror with a few questionable choices. But anyway, let's go ahead and get into it. I have 2 big honorable mentions that I did not get a chance to put in here. The first one being the Paranormal Activity franchise. It's one of my guilty pleasures. I've been there since the birth of the Paranormal Activity movies. I love, paranormal movies and just the concept of it in real life, of course, So I remember watching The Blair Witch for the first time. Just like in bed, growing up Catholic. You grew up with like these demonic entities and all this other crap, like it really fascinated me and it terrified me. And I watched all the Paranormal Activity movies. I don't put it on my resume, but I do really enjoy it. My personal favorite is the marked ones. I really like that one. And I really like Paranormal Activity 2 as well. That first one's iconic, don't get me wrong, but I do like that sequel just a little bit more. And then the next one I got to throw in there is the Dawn of the Dead Romero franchise. And the only reason I didn't put it down there is because I haven't watched all of them. I got as far as Land of the Dead, and I plan to watch those remaining ones. So I felt like maybe I, couldn't talk about those. But yeah, I tried to stick with movies that didn't have only 3 movies. To me, it's not a franchise if it only has 3. It has to have at least 4 movies in the franchise. And to go with that, because this franchise has 5 movies now, plus a TV show, little questionable, but honestly, I think this is a great horror franchise. I'm talking about the Purge movie franchise. I've seen all of them. They're great. The scariest thing is the political commentary. But this is a franchise I think most people know, the Purge movies. I feel like people judge this by its cover, what you see in the trailers, but it's so much more than that. I think this franchise did well, but I wish it got more love. I feel like it doesn't. And I think what's Halloween now without these Purge masks? That's my argument for why I think it is a horror movie franchise. I mean, people want to dress up with these masks on Halloween. Honestly, the concept is really cool. The political aspect of the movie is honestly not what you think it is. I think it's really well written. And the horror is insane. I mean, they feel like Mad Max mixed with like a zombie apocalypse for a night. It gives me great joy watching these movies. That first one especially is a twist on the home invasion genre too. So I got to give it its props. Where I have The Purge at number 10. Coming in next on the coming in at number 9, I have the Evil Dead franchise. A little high, I know. I was a lot late to the party for the Evil Dead franchise. I was in college when I first started watching them. Very much enjoyed them. 1 through 4 honestly are great. That remake is so good, and Freddy Alvarez makes me feel so excited for the new Alien Romulus movie that will be coming out. I have Evil Dead 2 here because that's my favorite from the 4. Ash finds, a book of the dead and a bunch of crazy shit happens in a cabin. It's a very simple premise. I love the indie style filmmaking of this, and the comedy works well. Honestly, great practical effects, great makeup. This movie in particular just feels like, so much gore and just over the top, trashiness. I love it. And honestly, Bruce Campbell is a legend for this movie. But yeah, I got to give it at the number 9 spot. Coming in at number 8 is a new franchise that I did discover last year. And honestly, I'm excited to rewatch and binge through them. It's also really great because you get one awesome movie in the very beginning. And that is the Psycho franchise. I feel like it's crazy to say that there is a franchise for the Psycho movies. But honestly, I'm so happy there is. These movies are bulletproof. I love all 4 of these movies. In particular, 3, I really enjoy. And just that first one, I talked about this on the podcast before, where, I wasn't too crazy about Psycho at first, but, watching it as an adult really had me grow and love this movie. And then, of course, watching its sequels just carries on so much more. Anthony Perkins is so great in these movies, and the fact that he's so committed to the role for each of these movies is great. He's kind of going through the traumatic loss of his mother, obviously, and trying to tell him not to kill, and hearing his mother's voice is just great. It's just such a great franchise. I think it knows what they want to do. They kind of stand alone on their own in terms of subgenre to the horror. And I think they all kind of add some sort of flavor that you could go and visit. So I have that here at number 8. Coming in at number 7 is a unapologetic choice, and I know it's going to raise some eyebrows, but that is the Resident Evil franchise. Starring Mila Jovovich, directed by Paul W.S. Anderson. I'm sorry, y'all. I love these movies so much. I grew up watching them. This first one, and the second one are just so iconic for me. And it's a twist on this genre of the zombie genre. You get a lot of action and thriller in these movies, and honestly, people say they go downhill, and maybe they do just a little bit, but honestly, they're just so damn enjoyable. The story's a little convoluted if you're a huge fan of zombie movies, because it's not really about that. It's more about corporation in the end of the world, or corporate greed, in the end of the world, which I think does a great job of being fantasy and over the top in these movies. I think if it wasn't called Resident Evil, I think we'd be in a better place, because there's just slightly related to the Resident Evil franchise. And I think they could be great as just standalone zombie action movies. I really like these movies so much. Those first 3 for me are so bulletproof. We also got a TV show, Welcome to Raccoon City. Honestly, inferior to these movies, to show you. I think that goes to show you just like how good these movies are in comparison to the closer relation to the video games that these later installments away from these movies were. So I got to give Resident Evil its flowers. I love these movies so much. I got that at number 7. Coming in at number 6, a franchise where I haven't actually seen all of them. I haven't seen 3 and 4, but that is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise. Probably the coolest name of any franchise horror movie, honestly. Where do I even begin? Texas Chainsaw Massacre 1 and 2 are just so phenomenal. I think they're head and shoulders above most horror movie franchise movies. Tobe Hooper directing that first one, and using the act of environment and suggestive horror to scare you even more than anything that blood and guts could be. And the title itself is a part of that kind of play on your senses, where you're just hearing Texas Chainsaw Massacre, you're going to assume it's going to be bloody and gory, and it's adding to that fear subconsciously or actually. So I got to give it props for that. The second one actually delivers the gore and the guts, which I do love, and it in this 4K is so good from Vinegar Syndrome that it just adds to it. Now, I haven't seen 3 and 4, but then you go to the Texas Chainsaw remake movies, where Texas Chainsaw Massacre and then the beginning Holy shit. Like, that is some good stuff right there. Let's talk about early 2000s, dirty, grimy, middle finger kind of attitude. So unapologetic. And then you go with the Netflix exclusive Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which is phenomenal. Talk about how to bring this franchise back in a great way. And yet, this franchise, like, it adds to the lore of Leatherface, which I do applaud. I do think it's really cool. But I like what the new one did, and kind of like what these original ones did as well, where it takes the angle of, like, the Sawyer family, Leatherface, and it pits them against, against, like, society and, like, how this kind of character family can exist. I think the early 2000s ones did a great job of that as well, showing, like, what it would have been like if these people were alive during the early 2000s, and, like, the over the top and scariness of it all works to perfection. And in 2022's Texas Chainsaw Massacre does the same thing in a different time period, and it works just as well. I think this franchise is a little clunky at times, but man, it is so enjoyable. I'm kind of sick for saying that. Like, I love it so much. Coming into the top 5, I'm going with Halloween. I have the Rob Zombie one because I love these two, but Halloween 2 is actually my favorite from the franchise. And talk about a franchise that has a lot of hiccups. The Halloween franchise is just so iconic. Michael Myers with Laurie Strode and their struggle to figure out if they're brother or sister, depending on the timeline you're in. And then you throw in the trilogy as well. The Haddonfield trilogy, I think, is what it's coined now. Promising start, yeah, but I think it shouldn't. I don't know. I'm not gonna get into it. I'm not crazy about those trilogy movies, but evil did eventually die that night, and are we in a better world for that? I don't know. We should have got a third movie. I wish we got a third movie so we could get a Rob Zombie trilogy. But what I love about the Halloween franchise is just the lore of Michael Myers. Honestly, I really love Donald Pleasant's presence in the movies. Whew, that was a tough one. I think he's a backbone of the franchise. I just enjoy seeing him in the movies, Dr. Loomis. I just think he brings so much to the movies besides just a mass killer stalking, Laurie Strode throughout the night. I think the Halloween franchise, what Rob Zombie brings to it is like a psychological aspect to it that I think is really great. Thinking about Michael Myers and the trauma he had when he was a kid, and then manifesting that into being just pure evil and mauling people. We talk about it, just a guy, it's just Michael. And, committing all these crimes, being a true force of evil, like pure essence of evil, is so cool. It's in Haddonfield, Illinois. So, I gotta have hometown love for it. And, it just has one of the best masks of any mask killer. I love the score that John Carpenter provides in these movies. It's just so great. And then, honestly, it's my favorite holiday, obviously, Halloween. And the movies all, no matter which one you're watching, except Resurrection, which I haven't seen, have some sort of theme or kind of atmosphere that is really enjoyable. When you mix that score. The masks have always been a little hit or miss, but you know what? I'll take it because this is such a goated franchise. I mean, what more can I say about Halloween? Coming in at number 4 is a franchise that I didn't think it'd be this close to being in the number 1, but that is the Friday the 13th franchise. I have it here with A New Beginning. It kind of feels like that with the Friday the 13th franchise. I wasn't always super crazy about this. I will go on to say that first one is pretty boring. I don't care too much for that first one. But man, I love 2. I would say 2 and 4. Probably I'd throw 6 in as well as my favorites. But even if they're not those 3 numbers, 3, 5 is super enjoyable. Jason X is crazy. I guess the only one I still haven't seen, and I don't know why I haven't, is Jason Takes Manhattan. I don't think I've seen that. But everything else is still really enjoyable. Jason X is kind of goofy in early 2000s, and I just love Jason, whether he's wearing a bag over his head, which is my personal favorite look, or if he's an imposter, or even if he's wearing something in the metal future, or he's just dead in like the New Blood. I just really enjoy Jason. I love the atmosphere of Camp Crystal Lake. It's true summer vibes. It's just a good time. I like the characters. I like it's the very obvious approach of like, where are we gonna go? Where Jason's gonna come and basically maul everyone. I personally enjoy it. I think these movies wear their heart in their sleeves. Really enjoy it. Each movie has some aspect to stand out, so you don't feel like you're just watching the same thing, which I feel like is, very detrimental to a franchise. I think something like the Conjuring movies, which I can't speak too highly of because I haven't seen them, but they all seem like they're the same movie. And even though you could say like, well, it's a guy wearing a hockey mask, there's still slashes, but there's still some aspects of just like the Halloween movies. You have different storylines. You have the Tommy Jarvis storylines. You have just the original storyline. You have the New Blood storylines. It can go all over the place, and that's why I like these movies. And honestly, you don't even have to watch them all in order. Even then, that's one thing that stresses me out about franchises is, well, if I'm watching this one, I probably need to watch the original again and just binge through them. Sometimes I don't want to binge through them. This franchise kind of gives me that, where I don't have to do that, and I can still enjoy the movies and enjoy the storylines for what they are. The top 3, and number 3 is the Child's Play franchise. Like I said with Friday the 13th, you don't have to watch the first one to enjoy every single, to watch the next one, or, maybe you want to watch Friday the 13th part 5, but you didn't want to watch the first 4. That's fine. Same thing with Child's Play. You split into the Child's Play franchise, the first 3, and then you get the Chucky movies right after that. And they do kind of play off each other a little bit, but you kind of get 3 different storylines with the Child's Play, the Chuckies, and then the updated Chuckies where you get with Curse. I did a video already on the Child's Play movies where I ranked them. If you haven't checked that video out, I highly recommend you do. Let me know what your thoughts were on the ranking. I feel like I don't need to talk too much else, but I do have Child's Play 3 at number 3. Coming in at number 2, and boy, this was tough, but honestly, the more I keep thinking about it, it fits because I love this director's work. I gotta go number 2 with Wes Craven's Scream franchise. I've seen every Scream movie, and honestly, if you told me to give a list, it'd be really tough, but I do know number 2 and number 4 would be fighting for number 1 for me. Yes, I love all of these but one. Honestly, that is the Scream remake from 2021 or 2022, where it was just called Scream, but it's actually Scream 5. I don't know why they didn't do that. Luckily, Scream 6 does fix those problems. And God, when I watched that movie, my love for this franchise was rejuvenated. Because the previous installment, before that, just sunk my hopes with this franchise so much, where it was like irreplaceable damage. But then 6 just completely just healed me for my love of this franchise. And honestly, it is one of the smartest. It's one of the most fun, enjoyable mystery slasher movies with just so much love. This is a movie made by a filmmaker for movie lovers, made well. I can't tell you how many times I've seen the Scream movies, and I just always enjoy it. Even though I know who the killer is, the story is so engaging. The mystery is always so good because Kevin Williamson is a GOAT in the 90s with these movies. And it's just such a great time. I love hearing the fourth wall breaking, the meta-ness of these movies. And I guess it's not fourth break, but the meta-ness of the movies, it's just such a breath of fresh air when it comes to these franchise movies. And I just love the characters. I love Sydney. I love David Arquette in these movies. Gale Weathers is great. This franchise is just so great. I love the different settings each time. They make sense. The kills are always really great. Even though it's a masked guy with a knife, the killings feel just so great. Like I can hear the stabbing from the knife, and it's so good. So I got to give Scream at number 2. Coming at number 1 is the first franchise I finished in my life, and I did it relatively young, and I'll never forget them. That is the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. And this garbage, terrible box set release. You heard there's a 4K release of the first one coming out. I need a 4K box set. Okay. I need it in a glove. So when you open up the glove, there's the movies you just pull out of the case. Nightmare on Elm Street. I mean, I love these movies. If you'd like to see me do a ranking of these movies, drop a comment down below. I've been meaning to do something like that, to just talk about Nightmare on Elm Street. It's my favorite franchise, but I hardly ever talk about it. But that's only because I never shut up about it when I was 9 or 10 years old. I was worn out with Nightmare on Elm Street by my teenage years because I watched them so many times. Do you remember the 4-film favorite DVDs from Walmart? I binged those like every weekend when I was a kid on DVD. And honestly, it was Nightmare on Elm Street 2 and 3. Actually, sometimes I would just watch the first 3. and on a weekend. I just do that. And then next weekend, it was, 4 through 7. The one movie I will not talk about because I do not like it is that remake of Nightmare on Elm Street. Do not care about that at all. Honestly, Wes Craven's New Nightmare isn't a movie that's really high on my list, but that might change when I do a rewatch because I do really want to rank these movies. But what can I say? Freddy Krueger, Nightmare on Elm Street, iconic Wes Craven. These movies were nightmare fuel for me. I was always afraid to sleep. That's probably why I like to stay up late even now as an adult. But I love Freddy the character so much. I love how terrifying and scary he is in those first 2 movies. I love the look of his character and how it changes. And then you get to 3 and 4 where he's just a little bit more silly, but he's still a little menacing. He's kind of a dick. I love it. And then you get obviously with the Dream Child, which I think is an incredible take on the formula with having a pregnant unborn child dreaming and I mean, this is stuff that should be in a separate video, but I just love that concept in the Dream Child. Unfortunately, Freddy's Dead is just not it for me, but we'll see. I'll have to rewatch these movies. But yeah, I just love the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. I love Freddy. I just love how these movies intertwine each other. The lore isn't necessarily that great, but it's still serviceable and enjoyable. So I got to give it to the iconic Nightmare on Elm Street. And also that score is so good. And that about wraps up the franchise horror for me. Let me know which ones did I miss? Which ones do you agree with? Maybe tell me some of your favorite installments from these franchise movies. I love franchise horror. I love binging. So I want to check out a few more that didn't get to make it to the list because I haven't seen them all. Other than that, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button if you did like this video and want to see more movies like me ranking franchises. Let me know down in the comments. Don't forget that subscribe button. Let's please try to get to 500. But other than that, thank you all for watching. My name is Chris here at Figure Out Films. And remember, if you aren't watching franchise horror movies, do you really care about cinema? Other than that, I'll see you next time.